Don't let the softness of your heart become the reason for your downfall. There comes a time in life when your loyalty becomes your prison, when your empathy is mistaken for weakness, and your silence is seen as approval. The world doesn't always reward kindness with kindness. It often tests the depth of your giving until there's nothing left of you to give. And in those moments when your soul feels drained, when your hands ache from holding on too long, and your mind whispers, "What about me?" you must awaken. You weren't born to be a sacrifice for others' comfort. You weren't designed to constantly bend so others don't break. There is a limit to your compassion, a boundary to your giving, and a line that must not be crossed. Not for family, not for friends, not for love. Not for love. Because when you let caring cost you your peace, your purpose, and your identity, you're not being noble. You're being erased. So pause. Look within and ask yourself, are you giving from overflow? Or are you pouring from an empty cup just to keep others full? You are not here to bleed emotionally for people who wouldn't offer you a bandage. Your heart is a temple, not a battleground. Guard it like your life depends on it, because it does. People will take as much as you're willing to give until you have nothing left for yourself. Caring without boundaries turns love into self-destruction. The more you tolerate, the more they expect, and the less they respect. Protect your peace like it's your greatest possession, because it is. Sometimes walking away isn't cruelty, it's self-respect. People will take as much as you're willing to give until you have nothing left for yourself. They'll see the door you've left open out of love and walk in with muddy feet. Not because they're evil, but because human nature tends to test limits. It isn't always malicious. It's often unconscious. But the effect is just the same. When you give endlessly, without pause, without replenishment, without guarding what keeps your spirit alive, you slowly start to disappear. Piece by piece. Not in an explosion, but in a quiet erosion of your essence. And nobody notices the disappearance because they're too busy benefiting from your presence. You become the solution to everyone else's problems. The listener, the giver, the fixer, the one who always shows up, who always says yes, who never complains, who keeps giving even when it hurts. And at first they thank you, they praise you, they admire how dependable you are, how selfless, how kind. But soon, your efforts become expected. Your help becomes assumed. And your sacrifices, they become invisible. People adjust. They build routines around your strength. They begin to rely on your silence. They become comfortable with your discomfort. The day you hesitate to give, they don't ask if you're okay. They wonder what's wrong with you. The moment you say no, you're not seen as tired, you're seen as difficult. The moment you falter, you're not human. You're failing in their eyes. Not because you owe them anything, but because they've grown used to your everything. You try to convince yourself that you're doing the right thing, that being there for others is noble, that your heart is strong enough to carry everyone, that your energy is endless. But inside, quiet storm brews. A whisper grows louder with every sleepless night, every overlooked effort, every one-sided conversation, every time your pain takes a back seat to their convenience. That whisper says you are not okay, and it's right. You're not. But you keep going. Because stopping feels selfish, because resting feels like failure, because you've tied your worth to how much you can endure for others, because no one taught you that self-preservation isn't selfish. It's necessary. It's necessary. Eventually, you look in the mirror and struggle to recognize who you've become. The light in your eyes isn't as bright. Your laugh doesn't come as easily. Your shoulders carry invisible weights. Your dreams gather dust on shelves marked as someday you find yourself anxious in peace because chaos became your comfort. You flinch at kindness because you've been conditioned to give it, not receive it. You feel guilty for thinking about your own needs. Guilty for wanting rest. Guilty for wanting rest. Guilty for wanting more. And that guilt is the most dangerous prison of all because it keeps you locked in patterns that deplete your soul under the illusion of love. That they don't mean to hurt you. That it'll get better. But it doesn't. Not until you change. Not until you decide that your energy is sacred. That your time matters. That your needs aren't secondary. That your dreams aren't selfish. That your voice deserves to be heard, not just when others need comfort, but when you need care. You begin to realize that being everything for everyone means being nothing for yourself. That loving others without loving yourself first is a slow kind of suicide. That the world won't collapse if you take a break. That people will adjust to your boundaries, or they won't, and either is okay. So you start small. You say no without explaining. You take time to breathe without guilt. You say how you feel without filtering it for someone else's comfort. You set limits and keep them even when they make others uncomfortable. You learn that discomfort is part of growth, not just for you, but for them too. You see that enabling people to rely on you for everything robs them of the chance to grow on their own. That love without boundaries isn't love, it's dependency. And dependency wears masks that look like loyalty, but underneath is fear. Fear that you'll be abandoned if you stop giving. Fear that your value is in what you do, not who you are. Fear that if you prioritize yourself, you'll lose the people you love. But you won't. You'll lose the ones who only loved you for what you gave. And that's a gift, not a loss. With time, you rebuild your life around a new truth, that you can care deeply without carrying everything. That your softness is a strength, but not a burden. That your time is finite and must be guarded like treasure. That love given freely must also be returned freely. And people who truly value you will understand your boundaries. They'll respect your need to rest, to dream, to grow. They won't guilt you for it. They won't make you feel small for choosing yourself. They'll stand beside you, not above you. They'll pour into you as you pour into them. And that balance will heal the parts of you that once bled quietly behind closed doors. It takes courage to stop overgiving. It takes strength to choose peace over approval. It takes wisdom to know when helping becomes harming. And it takes self-love to walk away from anything that costs you your mental, emotional, or spiritual well-being. This is not bitterness. This is not coldness. This is not revenge. This is clarity. This is reclamation. This is the moment you stop trading your joy for someone else's comfort. The moment you say, I matter too. The moment you realize that you were never meant to carry it all. You were meant to shine, to rise, to live fully, not as a background character in other people's stories, but as the main character in your own. And as that truth sinks in, everything begins to shift. You stop waiting for others to value you. You value yourself. You stop expecting reciprocity from takers. You align with givers. You stop drowning in others' expectations. You create your own standards. You let go of the idea that love means pain, that care means sacrifice, that support means silence. You redefine what it means to care. You learn that real love is mutual, that real respect includes your needs, and that real connection doesn't require you to shrink. You finally see that the most powerful thing you can do for the world is to become whole within yourself. If you'd like me to continue with the remaining part of this 8,000-word keynote, I can keep going in the same tone and style. Just say the word "caring." Without boundaries is like holding fire in your hands to keep others warm while you burn slowly, quietly, invisibly from the inside out. It begins so gently, almost beautifully, the desire to give, to nurture, to protect, to heal. You love with your full heart, with unshakable loyalty, with arms wide open and eyes that see the best in everyone. You pour yourself into the cracks of other people's pain, hoping to be the glue that holds them together. You believe that love is unconditional, that helping is noble, that sacrificing is sacred. But in that noble sacrifice, piece by piece, you begin to disappear. It doesn't happen all at once. It's a slow unraveling, a forgotten meal here, a missed night of sleep there, an overlooked hurt, a silenced opinion, a swallowed truth. You begin to compromise. You tell yourself it's only temporary. You believe that if you just give a little more, love a little harder, try a little longer, things will get better. They don't, because when there are no boundaries, there is no balance. When there are no limits, there is no respect. The people you care for may not mean to hurt you, but they will accept everything you offer, especially when it costs you. They will take your time, your energy, your heart, your peace, not out of malice, but because you've taught them that your needs come last. And eventually, you begin to teach yourself the same. You start believing that your value is in how much pain you can tolerate for someone else's comfort. That your worth is tied to how invisible you can make your own desires. That the right kind of love means being everything for someone and nothing for yourself. That belief becomes your prison. You tell yourself that boundaries are cold, that they create distance, that they'll push people away. But what they really do is protect the parts of you that need nurturing. Boundaries are the gates to your soul, not walls against connection. They teach others how to treat you. They are not cruelty. They are clarity. But when you care without them, you become a canvas for others to paint their needs on until there's no room left for your own colors. your joy fades. Your voice dims. Your passions wither. You begin to live on autopilot, responding to everyone else's emergencies while ignoring your own exhaustion. You smile when you want to cry. You agree when your soul says no. You show up when you should be resting. You give even when your cup is empty. You give even when your cup is empty. And no one sees the cost because you've made your suffering look graceful. You've hidden it behind strong words, behind being a fine, behind the mask of being the reliable one, the kind one, the helper. And because you've done it so well, no one thinks to ask if you're okay. They just keep taking. Not because they're evil, but because they've never had to consider your limits. You never showed them where they were. And so your heart becomes tired. Your mind becomes clouded. Your soul begins to ache in places you didn't know existed. You start resenting the very people you love, not because they're bad, but because you've been bleeding for them without noticing your own wounds. You lose sight of what you need, of who you are, of where you're going. Your life becomes a reaction to the needs of others instead of a reflection of your own purpose. You start confusing love with pain and attention with affection. You start believing that you're hard to love unless you're constantly useful, but real love does not demand your destruction. Real love does not require you to abandon yourself. Real love stands beside you, not on top of you. It doesn't ask you to shrink so someone else can feel big. It doesn't ask you to dim your light so someone else can shine. When you begin to reclaim your energy, to create boundaries, to say no, some people will resist. They will call you selfish, distant, or cold. They will be uncomfortable, not because you're doing something wrong, but because they were comfortable with you doing everything. You must remember that boundaries are not for them. They are an act of self-respect, a declaration that your needs are not negotiable, that your well-being matters, that your peace is non-negotiable, that your emotional labor is valuable. And when you start living from that truth, everything begins to shift. You start hearing your own voice again. You remember what you enjoy. You begin to create instead of only support. You stop apologizing for taking up space. You begin to heal, and in that healing, you learn that care given freely must come from abundance, not from depletion. That love must flow both ways. That giving without limits turns into enabling. That overextending yourself teaches others that your exhaustion is acceptable. That setting boundaries is not rejection, it's protection. That those who truly care will adapt. That your value is not in your suffering, it is in your presence, your energy, your spirit. And those who deserve you will never ask you to destroy those things to prove your love. You stop over-explaining. You stop over-giving. You stop over-giving. You stop begging to be seen. You stop proving your worth by bleeding. You begin to feel peace in saying no. You feel strength in silence. You feel power in walking away from anything that drains you. You learn that love with boundaries is the highest form of respect, not just for others, but for yourself. That the people who deserve your heart are the ones who protect it, not the ones who trample it. While thanking you for your softness, you begin to rebuild your life on the foundation of self-worth. You don't wait for others to honor you, you honor yourself. You stop chasing people who only come when they need something. You stop being available to everyone at all times. You recognize that being accessible doesn't mean being depleted, that being kind doesn't mean being used, that being generous doesn't mean being empty. You give from a full heart, not from obligation. You love with awareness, not with blindness. You support with limits, not with self-abandonment. You recognize the difference between being needed and being valued, between being appreciated and being exploited, between being loved and being used. And in that recognition, you step into your power, the power to choose, the power to protect your energy, the power to walk away, the power to stand firm, the power to love deeply but wisely, the power to know when enough is enough. You realize that you are not responsible for everyone's happiness, that healing others is not your full-time job, that saving people who don't want to be saved is a trap, that sacrificing your joy for their comfort is not love. It's bondage, and bondage disguised as love is the most dangerous kind. It keeps you loyal to pain. It keeps you it keeps you hoping for change in places that only drain you. It keeps you explaining your worth to people committed to misunderstanding it, but when you wake up, truly wake up, you see it clearly. You understand that your love is a gift, not a transaction. That your compassion is rare, not disposable. Ha! That your presence is powerful, not obligatory, that your soul was never meant to live in exhaustion. You begin to honor your own needs. You take space when you need it. You give yourself the care you give so freely to others. You speak kindly to yourself. You protect your energy like sacred ground. And slowly, the weight begins to lift. You begin to feel alive again. If you'd like me to continue the remaining section of this 8,000-word keynote, just say continue. I will follow the same tone and emotional depth that begins with silence. A small act that goes unnoticed by others but weighs heavily on your spirit. Someone crosses a line and you say nothing. You convince yourself it's not worth the argument. You rationalize it away, telling yourself they didn't mean harm, or maybe you're just too sensitive. So you let it go. You tolerate it, not because it didn't bother you, but because you've been conditioned to believe that keeping the peace is more important than honoring your truth. And so it starts. That first moment of silence becomes a pattern. That first ignored instinct becomes your new standard. People start to notice not your discomfort, but your compliance. They begin to interpret your tolerance as acceptance, your patience as permission, your silence as surrender. And with each time you say nothing, they ask for more, not with words, but with actions. The requests become heavier, the demands more frequent, the disregard more blatant. And you keep telling yourself you're being strong, that you're choosing love, that you're being the bigger person. But your heart knows the truth. You're shrinking. You're folding in on yourself. You're betraying the very core of who you are to keep the illusion of harmony alive. And with every act of self-betrayal, a part of you begins to resent not just them, but yourself. Because deep down, you know what you're allowing. You feel it in your body, in the tightness in your chest, in the ache in your stomach, in the tears that burn behind your eyes when no one is watching. You feel it in your dreams that are growing dimmer, in your spirit that's becoming heavier, in your voice that's becoming quieter, and the more you tolerate, the more they expect. It doesn't stop. It escalates. It evolves. It becomes the new normal. What once would have shocked you now barely gets a reaction. Not because it hurts less, but because you've become numb. You've taught yourself to cope. You've normalized dysfunction. You've adjusted your boundaries so many times they've disappeared. And those around you no longer see your sacrifices. They see a version of you who never complains, who never resists, who always shows up. They begin to believe that your exhaustion is your choice, that your silence is your satisfaction, that your giving is endless and your limits don't exist. And in that false narrative, they begin to lose respect for you, not intentionally, but because people often respect what they must work for. What they must earn, what challenges them to grow, not what always bends, always breaks, always yields. Your love becomes expected, not cherished. Your efforts become invisible, not valued. Your boundaries, when you try to set them, become inconvenient. Your needs, when you finally speak them, are dismissed. And it's not because you're unworthy. It's because your tolerance has rewritten the story of who you are. It has rewritten the rules of your relationships. It has told the world that you don't require the same care you give, that you don't need the same loyalty you offer, that you don't deserve the same patience, grace, or protection you extend, and the world listens. It always does. Tolerance without truth is a slow poison. It drains your life force. It robs your clarity. It clouds your intuition. It keeps you in places that do not honor your light. It keeps you saying yes when your soul is screaming no. It keeps you in rooms where you must dim your brilliance to make others comfortable. It keeps you surrounded by people who don't see the war inside your heart, only the smile you wear on your face. And you convince yourself that if you just hold on longer, they'll change. That if you love them harder, they'll see you. That if you prove you're worth enough, they'll finally treat you right. But it doesn't work like that. Because respect does not grow from compliance. It grows from courage. It grows from truth. It grows from boundaries spoken clearly and consistently. And without that, love becomes lopsided. Connection becomes control. And what you once thought was strength reveals itself as survival. There comes a moment when your soul can no longer bear the weight. When your body begins to break down under the stress of being everything for everyone except yourself. When your mind begins to spiral with resentment, guilt, confusion, and pain. When the very relationships you fought to protect begin to feel like prisons. And in that moment, you face a choice. You can keep tolerating and continue to disappear. Or you can reclaim your voice. You can begin the painful but necessary process of unbecoming everything you've had to be in order to be accepted. You can start to say the word that used to terrify you. No, not with cruelty, not with cruelty, not with bitterness, but with clarity, with confidence, with a deep inner knowing that your value is not negotiable, that your peace is not optional, that your time, energy, and love are sacred offerings, not default obligations. You begin to realize that tolerance isn't peace. It's avoidance. That being agreeable isn't always kind. It's often self-abandonment. That being liked is not the same as being respected. That being useful is not the same as being loved. You start to see the difference between people who value you for who you are and those who value you for what you do for them. And the difference is life-changing. You learn to pause before you say yes. You learn to check in with your intuition. You learn to listen to the tension in your body, the tightness in your throat, the heaviness in your chest. You learn to trust those signs more than the opinions of others. You learn that discomfort is not a reason to betray yourself, and slowly you begin to rebuild your inner world. You set new standards. You draw new lines. You communicate them without apology. You endure the discomfort that comes when people push back, when they question your changes. And outer, when they accuse you of being different, and you are different, because you finally realize that you deserve more than tolerance. You deserve reverence. You deserve spaces where your no is as welcome as your yes. You deserve relationships where your boundaries are met with curiosity, not contempt. You deserve connections where your soul can exhale. You stop explaining your decisions to people, committed to misunderstanding them. You stop offering your energy where it's not reciprocated. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop pretending you're fine when you're breaking inside. When you're breaking inside. You stop sacrificing your dreams to carry the weight of other people's expectations, and in that decision, you awaken a power within you that has been waiting to rise. A power that knows your worth. A power that speaks your truth. A power that refuses to tolerate what dishonors your spirit. A power that is not afraid to walk away from anyone or anything that costs you your self-respect. You realize that your life is not a performance. You are not here to earn love through suffering. You are not here to prove your worth through sacrifice. You are not here to be everything for everyone. You are here to live fully, love deeply, and honor yourself completely. And that requires boundaries. That requires honesty. That requires courage. That requires the willingness to disappoint others in order to be true to yourself. That requires the strength to tolerate the discomfort of growth instead of the pain of staying small. Let me know if you'd like me to continue this keynote with the remaining portion of the 8,000-word expansion. The next segment will follow this same emotional rhythm and motivational depth. There's a quiet agony that lives in the heart of someone who tries to heal the very person who broke them. It's a kind of emotional madness, wrapped in good intentions, disguised as love, fueled by hope. You believe that if you just love them enough, they will change. If you understand them deeper, they'll stop hurting you. If you just forgive again and again, they'll finally see your worth. But you don't realize that this is not healing. This is self-destruction in slow motion. They keep reopening the wounds they gave you, not because they don't know you're bleeding, but because your bleeding serves their comfort. And you keep handing them the knife, believing next time they'll use it to cut their own chains, not to cut you deeper. You make excuses for them. You replay their pain in your mind as justification for their actions. You carry their childhood, their trauma, their regrets like burdens you were born to lift. You convince yourself that they are broken, not cruel, that they're hurting, not toxic, that they don't mean to cause damage. They just don't know better. So you stay. You try. You give. You bend. You break. You lose yourself one piece at a time in the name of love. And every time they lash out, withdraw, manipulate, or betray you, you absorb the shock, telling yourself it's a test of your strength, a trial for your loyalty, a punishment you somehow deserve. You become addicted to their potential, not their reality, but the dream of who they could be if they just healed. And you believe you're the one meant to lead them there. You think you're their light, their safe space, their salvation. But in trying to heal them, you've abandoned yourself. You've stopped tending to your own wounds. You've stopped listening to your own soul. You've made their chaos your mission, their silence your puzzle, their healing your responsibility. And yet they keep bleeding on you and calling it an accident. They keep shattering you and calling it love. And you keep believing that maybe, just maybe, next time it will be different, but it won't be. Because someone who truly wants to heal does not keep returning to the scene of the crime. Someone who truly loves you does not continue to hurt you and then ask you to fix what they broke. They don't gaslight your pain. They don't twist your emotions. They don't turn your compassion into currency. They don't make you feel like your boundaries are betrayal. Healing does not require you to suffer. Love does not demand you to lose yourself. Growth is not born from ongoing pain. It is born from accountability, self-awareness, and change. And if they are not choosing those things, you cannot make them. No amount of love can replace their decision to evolve. It is not your job to be their mirror, their therapist, their savior. You are allowed to love someone and still walk away from them. You are allowed to say, I see your pain, but I will not let it destroy me. You are allowed to say, I forgive you, but I cannot keep letting you back in. You are allowed to say, I understand where your wounds came from, but I will not let you reopen mine. That is not cruelty. That is not cruelty. That is not abandonment. That is not cold. That is wisdom. That is self-respect. That is survival, because the longer you stay, the more you bleed. The longer you try to fix them, the more broken you become. The more you carry their healing, the more you neglect your own. And your heart was not designed to be a battlefield. Your soul was not made to be a punching bag. Your body was not meant to carry the weight of someone else's refusal to grow. You were meant to thrive, to feel peace, to feel seen, to feel sane, to feel safe. And if a relationship demands that you give those things up, it is not love. It is bondage, and bondage disguised as love is the most dangerous kind, because it makes you doubt your reality. It makes you question your worth. It makes you tolerate what you once knew was unacceptable. It makes you forget what real love even feels like. Love that doesn't wound. Love that doesn't confuse. Love that doesn't leave you feeling like you're too much and not enough at the same time. Love that doesn't need to be earned through pain. You cannot heal someone who doesn't want to be healed. You cannot fix someone who refuses to see that they're broken. You cannot save someone who uses your love as a shield from their own reflection. You cannot be whole while making them your purpose, because healing requires effort, and you don't realize it yet, but you're shrinking, not because of love, but because you've confused love with chaos. They come back with tears, with apologies, with promises. They show just enough remorse to pull you back. They remind you of the connection you once had. They say the right things at the right moment, and you, craving relief from the confusion and pain, grab onto it like oxygen. You want to believe it's real. You need it to be real. Because if it isn't, then everything you've endured was for nothing. You let them in again. And your soul once again watches you abandon yourself. It watches you trade calm for comfort. It watches you place their potential above your peace. You try to rationalize the unrest. You say relationships aren't perfect, that it's normal to have ups and downs, that no one is easy to love. And while that may be true, it does not justify the erosion of your spirit. Love is not meant to confuse you more than it heals you. It's not meant to keep you in a cycle of uncertainty. It's not meant to make you question your worth. But when you keep choosing someone whose love feels like a battlefield, you begin to internalize war as home. You begin to mistake intensity for intimacy. You start thinking love has to be dramatic to be real. And your nervous system stays in a constant state of alert, never knowing when the next emotional grenade will explode. You've become so used to chaos that peace feels boring. You've gotten so comfortable being unsettled that the idea of stability feels foreign. You question the authenticity of anyone who treats you gently. You push away people who are consistent because it doesn't feel like love. And that's what happens when your heart learns the wrong lessons, when it equates unpredictability with passion, when it interprets pain as proof of connection, when it accepts a storm as standard. But peace is not boring. Consistency is not dull. Love that is calm and safe and kind is not fake. It's just unfamiliar when you've been conditioned by chaos. Your soul is tired. Not just tired in the physical sense, but spiritually exhausted. It's been begging for you to come back home, to choose quiet over commotion, to choose truth over illusion, to choose healing over hurting. But every time you go back to them, despite knowing better, you deepen the message to yourself that love requires you to suffer, and your soul learns to settle. It learns to brace itself. It learns to hide. And eventually the most sacred parts of you begin to fade. Your creativity, your softness, your light, all dimmed in order to survive someone else's darkness. You weren't made to live like this. You weren't made to constantly question your reality, your emotions, your instincts. You weren't made to pour yourself empty and call it love. You weren't made to carry relationships that leave you more alone than connected. And the truth is, deep down, you know this. You know what peace feels like, even if it's been a long time? You've tasted it in moments of stillness, in brief seconds where you weren't consumed by them, in quiet mornings before the chaos began again. You know peace because your soul aches for it, cries for it, cries for it. Desperately tries to guide you back to it, but healing requires more than knowing. It requires choosing. Over and over, choosing peace even when it's unfamiliar, choosing your own voice even when it shakes, choosing to walk away even when it hurts. Choosing to trust that real love doesn't ask you to betray yourself, and it will be painful. You will grieve. You will question everything. You will miss them. You will wonder if you're overreacting, if maybe you gave up too soon. But your soul will feel the shift. Your body will begin to relax. Your mind will start to quiet. Your spirit will rise. You'll begin to unlearn the lie that love equals chaos. You'll begin to recognize red flags for what they are, not invitations to heal someone, but warnings to protect yourself.